The footage is grainy, black and white, taken from a high-angle security camera in a private, undisclosed location. The timestamp blinks erratically, as if even time itself is struggling to keep up. A man in a sharp black suit walks into the frame, his face calm, but his presence unsettling. The suited man. Across from him, seated under a single flickering bulb, is Keanu Reeves. His face is unreadable, his hands resting on the metal table before him. His long, dark hair barely moves, despite the draft from a vent above. The air in the room seems wrong. A low hum fills the space, the kind of sound you don't notice until it stops. The suited man slides a thick folder across the table, and it lands in front of Keanu with a dull thud. "You know what this is," the man says, his voice measured, almost amused. Keanu remains silent. He doesn't touch the file. He doesn't need to. The suited man shifts in his chair. He expected resistance, but not this. Not the complete, unwavering stillness. It's as if Keanu is waiting, not for the file, not for answers, but for something else. Then, something happens. Something that no one, not the security team watching live, not the experts reviewing the footage later, can explain. The air pressure in the room shifts. A coffee cup, placed absent-mindedly by an officer outside the room, shudders across the table. The timestamp on the security footage skips forward by 3 seconds. Keanu blinks slowly. "You shouldn't have come here." And then, just for a fraction of a second, the camera feed distorts. Keanu is gone. No movement. No blur. 1 second he is there, the next, he isn't. The suited man stiffens. His hands, once steady, clench involuntarily. The security team watching this unfold exchange nervous glances. One of them taps the screen, thinking the glitch is on their end. But the temperature sensors confirm it, the room is getting colder. "Run it back," someone mutters. Frame by frame. They do. Over and over. But no matter how many times they rewind, analyze, slow it down, there's no explanation. No blur. No motion. Keanu simply ceases to exist for 3 seconds. And then, just as suddenly, he is back in the chair. Same posture. Same unreadable expression. As if he never left. The suited man exhales, his confidence slipping. "You think you can intimidate me?" Keanu tilts his head slightly, considering the question. The flickering light above him stabilizes. The coffee cup outside the room stops shaking. "No," Keanu finally says. "But you should be afraid." The suited man doesn't respond immediately. The silence stretches, growing heavier by the second. The security feed captures something strange, his pulse, visible in his throat, quickens. "Afraid of what?" he asks, his voice lower now, almost wary. Keanu exhales slowly. His breath is visible now, despite the room being warm. The temperature drops another 5 degrees. And then, impossibly, Keanu's reflection in the one-way mirror behind him does not match his real-time movements. The suited man notices. The security officers watching notice. One of them mutters a curse under his breath. This isn't a malfunction. It isn't a glitch. Something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. The suited man grips the table. He's dealt with powerful people before, exposed secrets that ruined lives. But this isn't power. This is something else. He forces himself to smirk. "Parlor tricks," he says. "Sleight of hand. Clever edits." Keanu leans forward. The smirk disappears from the suited man's face. The tension in the room spikes like a static charge before a lightning strike. "You don't believe that," Keanu says, his voice softer now. "Not really." The suited man opens his mouth, to argue, to press further, but stops. The lights flicker. The timestamp on the security footage skips forward again, 5 seconds this time. Keanu is still seated in the same position, but now, so is the suited man. But he doesn't remember sitting. Doesn't remember moving. His knuckles are white. His breathing uneven. His palms? Ice cold. For the first time in his life, he looks afraid. And Keanu? He just smiles. The suited man doesn't move. He barely breathes. But his mind is working, running calculations faster than even he realizes. Keanu, still sitting across from him, doesn't break his stare. His posture remains relaxed, effortless. It's almost unnatural, almost as if he's studying rather than being studied. But the suited man has seen it all before. He's faced politicians, corporate giants, war criminals. He knows how to push, how to manipulate. He leans forward, pressing his fingers together like a chess player about to make a decisive move. You like to play games, don't you? His voice is steady, carefully measured. But here's the thing about games, Keanu, only one person wins. Keanu doesn't react. He doesn't blink. The suited man slides the folder back toward himself, opens it with slow precision. Inside, rows of images, some blurred, some crystal clear, each one stranger than the last. Surveillance footage from different years, different locations, all showing him. Keanu in 1985, outside a bookstore. Keanu in 2001, stepping out of a car that no longer exists. Keanu in 2024, wearing the exact same jacket, the same expression, the same ageless face. The suited man taps the photos lightly. Explain these. Keanu finally moves. Just slightly. His fingers hover over the images but never touch them. His eyes scan them, but without surprise. I don't need to explain anything, he says. His voice is calm, but the room feels different now. He's shifted something, not physically, but psychologically. The control the suited man thought he had is slipping, even if he doesn't know how. The suited man smirks, shaking his head. You think silence will protect you? Keanu's gaze doesn't waver. You think words will protect you? A flicker of irritation crosses the suited man's face, but he buries it quickly. This is what he does best, destabilizing people, forcing them to crack. He leans back, crosses his arms, acting like he's figured it all out. You've built a myth around yourself. The whole immortal thing. It's brilliant, really. Never age, never change. Make people believe the impossible. He gestures at the cameras in the room, the people watching behind the glass. But the thing is, Keanu, myths don't hold up under scrutiny. And I don't care what kind of tricks you pulled earlier, I will break this illusion. Keanu exhales. It's slow, deliberate. The suited man watches, waiting for a shift, a hesitation, anything that tells him he's winning. Instead, Keanu does something strange. He smiles. Not a smirk. Not a forced grin. A genuine, quiet, almost amused smile. The suited man stiffens slightly, but masks it. You think I'm an illusion? Keanu asks. The suited man shrugs, acting unfazed. I think you've spent a long time perfecting an act. Keanu nods slowly, considering the words. And what if I have? The suited man narrows his eyes. Then I'll expose it. Keanu leans forward now, mirroring his opponent's posture. His voice drops just slightly. And what if it's not an act? The room tightens. The temperature dips again, but not enough to be noticeable, just enough to be felt. For the first time, the suited man hesitates. Just a fraction of a second. But Keanu notices. He notices everything. Let's play your game, Keanu says, tapping the folder gently. You want to find the cracks in the illusion? Go ahead. Look deeper. I'll wait. His voice is steady, but there's something in it now, something the suited man can't quite place. Not fear. Not anger. Something worse. Certainty. A beat of silence. Then, the lights flicker again. The suited man doesn't react, not outwardly. But inside, a thread of doubt coils tighter. He glances at the camera in the corner of the room. The red recording light blinks once, too slow. He shifts in his seat, subtly uncomfortable now. You're not special, Keanu, he says, but the conviction in his voice is slightly weaker. You're a story that's gotten out of control. Keanu tilts his head. His reflection in the one-way glass behind him lags by half a second. The suited man sees it. And for the first time, his pulse spikes. But Keanu? Keanu just watches him. Waiting. Because he already knows how this ends. For the first time, the suited man hesitates. It's small, just a flicker of doubt, barely visible. But Keanu catches it. He always does. The game had been going according to plan. The suited man had studied him, built his strategy, laid every psychological trap perfectly. Keanu was supposed to crack under the pressure, make a mistake, give something away. But now, everything shifts. Keanu doesn't just resist. He sees through it. The suited man realizes it too late. He sees it in Keanu's expression, a subtle but unmistakable change. The patience is gone. The passive silence is over. Keanu leans forward slightly, and when he speaks, his voice isn't just calm. It's certain. You've been asking the wrong questions. The suited man frowns. That wasn't supposed to happen. Keanu taps the folder between them, the same one filled with years of surveillance images, time-stamped footage, evidence meant to corner him. But now? It's not evidence against him. It's proof of something else. Something bigger. The suited man's fingers twitch involuntarily. His entire strategy was built on one thing: controlling the flow of information, maintaining dominance in the conversation. But Keanu has just rewritten the game. Look at these again, Keanu continues. Really look. The suited man hesitates, but only for a second. He won't let Keanu dictate the pace. He flips through the photos, scanning them, ready to counter whatever angle Keanu is playing. Then, his hand stops. Something is wrong. It's the same photos, the same timestamps. But there's a shift. A distortion. The suited man's throat tightens. No, this isn't possible. He had these analyzed. Verified. Cross-checked. Yet now, right in front of him, something is different. The background of one image, a street corner in 1999, isn't just old. It's identical to a street corner today. Not similar. Identical. The same cracks in the sidewalk. The same graffiti in the exact same pattern. The same broken lamppost, leaning at the exact same angle. As if time itself hasn't moved. The suited man flips to the next image, his motion sharper now, more urgent. Another pattern repeats. Another location frozen in time. And then, the final picture. A photo of himself. Sitting at this table. Right now. His breath catches. The timestamp in the bottom corner matches this exact moment. That's not possible, he murmurs under his breath. But Keanu doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. Because the suited man has just realized what's happening. He wasn't interrogating Keanu. He wasn't closing in on the truth. He was walking into a trap. Keanu tilts his head slightly, observing the slow unraveling of the man in front of him. It's unsettling, isn't it? He says softly. Seeing something you thought you controlled slip through your fingers. The suited man's pulse is too loud now. The cameras in the room whine, a high-pitched, almost imperceptible ringing. The temperature dips again, colder this time. The suited man forces himself to focus. This is a trick, he says, but the confidence in his voice is gone. He stands abruptly, stepping away from the table, shoving the photos back as if he can undo what he just saw. Keanu stays seated. Unmoved. Unbothered. You wanted the truth, Keanu says. You're looking at it. The suited man shakes his head. No. No, this is manipulation. A setup. Clever editing. Someone fed you these. Keanu cuts him off. You don't believe that. The suited man stops. A chill runs through his spine, not from the cold, but from the realization that Keanu is right. Because deep down, he does believe it. The evidence isn't crumbling. His entire perception of reality is. The cameras around the room click, distort, and reset. The suited man glances at them sharply, his heartbeat too fast now. And then, Keanu stands. Finally. It's not a rushed movement. It's not aggressive. But it's absolute. And it changes everything. The suited man steps back. Keanu steps forward. And suddenly, for the first time in this entire interaction, the suited man isn't the one in control. He was never in control. He was being studied. Keanu exhales. The cameras flicker again. And then, Keanu reaches out. Just a simple movement. A hand extended. Palm up. A choice. The suited man freezes. Because somehow, he knows. If he takes that hand, everything changes. His world. His understanding. His very existence. Keanu waits. No pressure. No rush. Just the weight of an offer that cannot be undone. The suited man stares at the hand, and for the first time in his life, he doesn't know what to do. And then, the cameras cut to black. The silence in the room is unbearable. The cameras, usually capturing every detail with clinical precision, flicker uncertainly. Something is wrong. A journalist in the observation room fumbles with his pen, sending it clattering to the floor. He scrambles to pick it up, his breathing shallow, his hands unsteady. Another, a seasoned analyst who has dissected hundreds of high-profile interrogations, stares at the screen, his mouth slightly open. He tries to take notes, but his fingers won't cooperate. Nothing about this makes sense. The suited man, once so confident, is visibly unraveling. His breath is uneven, his movement stiff, as if the very air around him has thickened. He knows he's losing control, but he refuses to accept it. He adjusts his tie, a practiced motion meant to steady himself, but his fingers tremble against the silk. Across the table, Keanu remains seated, his expression unreadable. The cameras flicker again, and for a split second, something shifts. The shadows in the room stretch unnaturally before snapping back into place. It's almost imperceptible, but the reaction is instant. A woman on the security team gasps audibly. The lead investigator sitting beside her leans forward, rewinding the footage frame by frame, but the distortion is already gone. His jaw tightens. "That's impossible," he mutters under his breath. Back in the room, the suited man grips the table edge, his knuckles white. He forces himself to speak, but the words don't come easily. What are you?" Keanu tilts his head, considering the question. He could answer. But he doesn't. Instead, he lets the silence weigh on the suited man, forcing him to confront the terror creeping into his own mind. Someone in the control room adjusts the volume. The mics in the interrogation room pick up everything, the low hum of the overhead lights, the almost imperceptible hitch in the suited man's breathing, the slow, measured inhale and exhale of Keanu, who isn't reacting the way a normal person should. And then, the temperature drops again. The journalist writing notes stops mid-sentence. His breath fogs the air. His pulse hammers in his ears. The security feed shows the exact temperature in the room, dropping fast. The suited man feels it too. The cold seeps into his bones, into his lungs. But he won't break. He refuses to break. He straightens, forces a smirk, shakes his head. "Nice tricks," he mutters. "That's all this is, right? A performance?" Keanu's expression remains unchanged. Then, he does something unexpected. He smiles. It's not threatening. It's not forced. It's knowing. And that, more than anything else, unnerves the suited man. A rival analyst, watching from another room, leans forward with a smirk of her own. She's seen men like this fall apart before. But never like this. Never this fast. She takes a sip of her coffee, letting the scene unfold. The suited man grips the back of his chair, his fingers pressing deep into the leather. He looks at the security glass behind Keanu, his own reflection staring back at him. Except, something is wrong. His reflection is a half-second out of sync. He freezes. That's not possible. He turns his head slightly, just to test it, and his reflection follows, too late. His pulse spikes. His throat goes dry. He glances at Keanu. Still smiling. The security team notices it too. A tech specialist rewinds the footage, watching the moment again. "What the hell?" she whispers. In the observation room, a journalist fumbles for his phone, instinctively wanting to record the footage. But his hands are too unsteady, and the phone slips from his grasp. No one dares to speak. The suited man tries to compose himself, his mind racing for a logical explanation. There has to be a reason for all of this. But deep down, he already knows the truth. He has spent his entire career exposing lies, uncovering secrets, bending power to his will. But this? This isn't a lie. This isn't something he can debunk. It's something he can feel. And that realization, the moment he knows he's dealing with something far beyond his control, is the moment he truly begins to panic. Keanu leans forward just slightly. Not enough to be aggressive. Just enough to make the suited man feel trapped. Then, Keanu finally speaks. "You don't have to believe it," he says softly. "It will happen anyway." The cameras cut to black. The room feels smaller now. The walls aren't actually closing in, but the suited man feels it. The weight of something intangible pressing in, making the air thick, making every breath just a little harder to take. The security cameras continue rolling, but the feed glitches, small distortions flickering across the screen, barely noticeable but wrong. The experts watching later will rewind it, slow it down, analyze every frame. And they'll find nothing. Because what's happening in this room isn't meant to be recorded. The suited man's fingers twitch slightly. He hides them under the table, but Keanu notices. Of course he does. His gaze is sharp, cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "I've exposed men like you before," the suited man says, his voice low but firm. "I know how power works." Keanu watches him, his expression unreadable. Then, after a pause, he simply shakes his head. "No," he says softly. "You don't. It's not an insult. Not an argument. It's a fact." The suited man clenches his jaw. He forces a smirk, trying to reclaim control. "And I suppose you do?" Keanu tilts his head slightly, considering this. Then, he leans forward just enough to make the suited man tense. Not fear. Just anticipation. "The difference between us," Keanu says, his voice steady, "is that I don't need control." The suited man stiffens. "That's your first mistake," Keanu continues, his words deliberate. The suited man exhales sharply, gripping the edge of the table. "And my second," he mutters. Keanu doesn't blink. Doesn't move. "The second," he says, voice quieter now, "was thinking you were the one in control." The suited man swallows, the weight of those words settling into his bones. He shouldn't feel this way. He's been in real power struggles before. He's sat across from world leaders, criminals, billionaires. He's played these games and won. But this isn't a game. He shifts in his seat, trying to shake off the unease creeping up his spine. But it's too late. Because he feels it now. Not just fear. Something deeper. A kind of realization that creeps up slow, like a shadow stretching under a dying light. "You built your empire on fear," Keanu says, his voice calm. "But now, even you are afraid." The suited man clenches his jaw, trying to suppress the involuntary shudder that passes through him. "I don't scare easily," he bites back, though the words don't land. Keanu doesn't challenge him. He just leans in slightly, the kind of movement that doesn't seem threatening, but is. "Then why are your hands shaking?" The suited man glances down, his fingers are trembling. His breath catches in his throat. The cameras catch everything. The security officers monitoring the feed see it. The journalists analyzing the footage later see it. His power isn't slipping. It's gone. He curls his fingers into fists, presses them against the cold metal table to stop the shaking. "This is manipulation," he spits out, desperate now. "You're playing mind games." Keanu exhales slowly, his breath visible now, despite the room being warm. The temperature has dropped again. Then, he speaks, so softly, so deliberately, that it feels like the words settle into the air itself. "You never wanted the truth." The suited man's pulse is visible in his throat now. Keanu tilts his head. You wanted control. The suited man's breath stutters. Keanu blinks slowly, like he's letting the moment stretch, letting the weight of his words sink in. And now, he continues, his voice like a scalpel. You have neither. The suited man's lips part slightly, like he wants to say something. But nothing comes. Because there's nothing left to say. The realization dawns on him slowly, a suffocating kind of recognition. This isn't a battle he's lost. He was never even in it. A faint, high-pitched whine builds in the security feed. It's not loud, not something the human ear fully registers, but it's there. The lights flicker. The cameras glitch. And then, for a split second, just a fraction of a moment, Keanu's reflection in the one-way mirror disappears. The suited man's eyes widen. And then, blackout. Every screen cuts out. The feed dies. For 7 whole seconds, there is nothing. When the cameras come back, Keanu is gone. No movement. No sound. No trace that he was ever there. The suited man is alone. His breathing is ragged. His hands are still trembling. And when he looks up at his own reflection in the one-way mirror, he doesn't recognize himself. Because something is different now. Something has changed. And for the first time in his life, he has no idea what happens next. The world erupts. The security footage leaks within hours. Despite the classified nature of the recording, an anonymous source uploads it to a dark web forum, where it's quickly downloaded and disseminated across every corner of the internet. At first, people assume it's an elaborate hoax. A viral marketing stunt. A deepfake. But then, experts weigh in. Forensic analysts examine the footage frame by frame. They try to debunk it, but they can't. The anomalies, the glitches in time, the discrepancies in reflections, none of it makes sense. The scientific community refuses to acknowledge it, yet behind closed doors, they struggle to explain it. And then, someone comes forward. A former intelligence officer, anonymous, voice distorted in an interview, claims this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Keanu Reeves has been on classified watch lists for over a decade. Not because he's dangerous. But because he's unexplainable. The internet explodes. Small Blue Diamond, who is Keanu Reeves, really? Small Blue Diamond, security experts admit, we don't know what we saw. Small Blue Diamond, time travel? Simulation glitch? The Keanu conspiracy deepens. Governments scramble to control the narrative. The suited man, the once powerful figure interrogating Keanu, is now the subject of intense public scrutiny. Then, he vanishes. No press conferences. No official statement. One morning, a junior analyst leaks an internal memo, Operation Redacted, subject has been neutralized. Containment unsuccessful. Proceeding with damage control. Neutralized. The word spreads like wildfire. The suited man's associates start resigning, one after another. Major corporate sponsors linked to his agency cut ties overnight. And then, one final, terrifying detail emerges. Keanu Reeves hasn't been seen in days. No paparazzi photos. No public sightings. No social media posts. Then, one blurry image surfaces. A surveillance still from an airport in Switzerland. Keanu. Wearing the same black suit from the interrogation. Standing alone. And staring directly into the camera. As if he knows he's being watched. As if he wants them to know. The internet goes into a frenzy. Where is Keanu Reeves? What did they try to do to him? Or worse, what did he do to them? Meanwhile, inside the highest levels of government, hushed meetings take place. A chilling question lingers. Is this the first time he's done this, or just the first time we caught it on camera? This isn't just a story. This isn't just another viral mystery or internet conspiracy. This happened. You've seen the footage. You've heard the experts struggle to explain it. You've watched governments panic as they scramble for answers they don't have. But here's the real question, what do you believe? Think about it. A man, Keanu Reeves, vanishes for seconds without a trace, then reappears as if time itself had skipped forward. A room full of professionals, people trained to recognize deception, are left speechless. A powerful interrogator, who has faced the most dangerous figures in the world, walks away shaken. And now, he's gone. And Keanu? Keanu knew. He didn't panic. He didn't react. He simply let it happen. So here's where you come in. Go back. Re-watch the footage. Look at every detail. Did you notice the way the timestamp flickered, only after Keanu spoke? Did you see the way his reflection didn't match, only when he was in control? Did you feel it, the way the room itself seemed to change the moment he decided it was time? Because if you saw it, if you felt it, then you're already closer to the truth than they ever were. But here's the real question. Would you have seen it coming? Or were you, just like everyone else, too late? Comment below. Let's see who's really paying attention.